Calling the roll, Mr. Schron.
Here.
Mr. Tuma. Here. Mr. Hauser.
Here.
Ms. Baker. Here. Ms. Simon. We have a quorum.
Is there anyone signed in for public comment?
No, no one has signed in.
Okay. Well, ordinarily, the committee meetings, we do not have recognition for things of personal time or anything of that nature, but I think that the chair will take deference in the fact that I think that a silent meditation is certainly appropriate for what took place yesterday in Pittsburgh. So the chair will take its discretion of taking time to say its thoughts and prayers. Thank you. The minutes of the October 25th, October 15th meeting have been distributed. Does everybody have a chance to read those? Is there any comments in regards to it? The chair will move. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion in regards to anything that appeared in the minutes? Hearing none. All in favor of approval of the minutes as read, as presented, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion for the minutes is carried. We have one item for referral to the committee. If you could please read it in the record.
Resolution number 2018-0217, authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $36 million multifamily housing mortgage revenue bonds, Series 2018, Hamlet Hills LLC, by the County of Cuyahoga, Ohio.
And is there someone here from the administration to speak on behalf?
Good afternoon, Sarah Parks Jackson with the Department of Development. The Department of Development is requesting a resolution to authorize the issuance of not to exceed $36 million of multifamily housing revenue bonds for the benefit of Hamlet Hills LLC. Ohio Revised Code 133.51 allows counties to issue these private activity bonds, often called conduit bonds, to assist in the provision of housing. The interest on the bonds is tax exempt under federal law in accordance with Internal Revenue Code 103B. It's also required that a minimum of 20% of the units are restricted to those in the 50% area median income range, which for our area is, for a one-person household, $24,750. The bonds do not represent or constitute a debt or pledge of faith and credit or the taxing power of the county or the state. Hamlet at Chagrin Falls is the project name, is a full-service rental senior community which includes 136 units of independent living housing, and it also has an assisted living facility on the campus as well as a nursing home facility. The estimated project cost, of course, is $36 million, with $8 million going towards improvements and approximately $28 million toward a debt restructuring. To further speak on the bonds is Josh Grossman from Dinsmore and Shoal, and also with us today is Mr. Scott Kelman, who is CEO of American Eagle.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Sarah did a pretty fantastic job summarizing everything. I had this whole speech planned out, but I'll cut it a bit
Please put your name
shorter.
on the record, and then we'll,
Oh,
yep,
sorry.
that's okay.
Joshua Grossman, Dinsmore and Shoal.
Okay.
And this is Scott Kelman, the CEO of American Eagle. We're acting as bond counsel and borrower's counsel in this transaction. As Sarah mentioned, in this proposed issuance, if the county is to issue its bonds, will be in an amount not to exceed $36 million. And those proceeds will be loaned to American Eagle Hamlet Hills LLC. The bonds will be used to refund and retire prior debt that was used to acquire the 136-unit senior independent living complex known as Hamlet at Chagrin Falls. which is located at 200 Hamlet Hills Drive in Chagrin Falls, Ohio. Proceeds will also be used to finance costs of certain capital improvements of that facility, to fund one or more debt service reserve funds for the payment of principal and interest on the bonds, to fund certain working capital needs of Hamlet Hills LLC, and to pay certain costs of issuance in connection with the bonds. Again, the bonds will be backed solely by the revenues of American Eagle. No taxpayer dollars will be pledged or used to pay back the bonds. The bonds do not constitute debt or general obligations of Cuyahoga County and do not affect in any way the ability of the county to issue its own bonds.
Okay, well, you said loaned, and I thought you said loaned. Did you? But I assume you meant sold. These are going to be sold in the marketplace out there?
Correct. So technically, the bonds are issued by the county. The county receives the proceeds and then loans those proceeds to, it's under a loan agreement. It's the structuring of the transaction. It's not the county's debt. All of the indemnification is in place, but that's just how, under the Ohio Revised Code, the transaction takes place.
But the bonds are going to be sold to an individual?
So
or
they will be sold I think at this point, the understanding is completely to institutional investors. They'll be held out there for anyone to purchase, but I think under the current structuring, it will be solely institutional investors that will purchase the bonds.
Okay. Any questions as far as the financing before we get to Mr. Kelman? Is that?
Kelman.
Okay, before we get to Mr. Kelman, any questions in regards to either the executive's office or the bond counsel?
I have a quick question. How did you find out about this opportunity with the county? How did you come to have this proposed deal happen?
So because American Eagle qualifies as a borrower who's allowed to take advantage of tax-exempt bonds because of their tax-exempt purpose, we need a conduit issuer to issue the bonds. And we could have gone through multiple different issuers, but how it worked out in terms of the financing schedule and the county's willingness to work on our timeline, it made more sense to go through the county than through Chagrin Falls. Chagrin Falls was another option of an issuer for the bonds. And we, again, appreciate the county's willingness to issue the bonds on behalf of American Eagle.
Is this property in Geauga County or Cuyahoga County?
Cuyahoga County.
Okay.
But you could have gone to the Port Authority and other places too, I assume, yeah.
Correct, yeah, that is correct.
What made ours more attractive?
The timeline, I think that was a big part of it. The willingness of the county to get on board with our schedule. We're trying to close the deal before the end of the year. And it was more expedited going through the county than through the other potential issuers.
Other than the improvements to the property itself, which will be beneficial to the county, what other benefits do we receive as a result of this?
Well, so American Eagle is a nonprofit institution, and they, by issuing the bonds, will have more money to continue on with their nonprofit goals. So in terms of the refinancing portion of the project, will give them more money to carry on with their nonprofit endeavors, which enhances the lifestyle of those that are part of the county that reside in the facility.
Sarah Parks Jackson knows where these questions are going from me, because I've asked them before when we've done these. What do we as a county get in the way, are we charging a fee or service, or is there some kind of a load that we're putting on these to actually carry our administrative costs? Because you don't do this for free. And
Sure.
in the past, we have discounted our services in there, and I realize you get a benefit and you get a speed, and so we should get something in return for the taxpayers.
Mr. Chairman, there was a $1,000 non-refundable application fee. There is an issuance fee that is based on the exact amount they issue. Up to the first 15 million is based on 25 basis points, and the remaining balance is 10 basis points. So right now, we're looking at about $55,000 for a fee.
55,000?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's, I would have liked to, it would have been nice to have heard that we get $55,000 for your time and your energy to make sure the back office piece is done. And that should be, we should be able to more than cover, I would think, our cost of this for that. And I remember we had this discussion a couple times ago that everybody should be able to come out a winner out of this. And to make basically $56,000, $1,000 for the issuance of that is nice. I still think the issuance of $1,000 is cheap, but Ms. Simon, go ahead.
If this is the correct time, but you mentioned the property is going to be, the property benefits. What is the nature of the land that's?
Let's give Mr. Kellum, why don't you go through the project now?
So my name's Scott Kelman, and I started American Eagle back in 2002. So it's been out there for a while. We've never had default. We've never had a problem, and we've provided millions of dollars of free care to the residents over that period of time, both in the skilled nursing and the assisted living sectors. This particular project we acquired in 2014, and we acquired it with bank financing at that particular time. That financing is going to come due, and we wanted to take advantage of today's low rates, relatively low rates, and refinance this prior to when that financing came due. So this is a refinance for us, not for you. You're issuing the bonds for the first time. And we do operate this on a not-for-profit basis, which means that if somebody expires all of their, or extends all of their resources, we have a policy to, if they have reached out to all their financial resources and attempted to reach to public monies and whatnot, if they're not able to pay, we keep them in the community, and as long as we can service their level of care within the community and provide them the aid that they might need, they remain in the community at our expense. And so there is a public benefit to this. But more importantly, I was just out of the facility, and it's a 50-year-old facility. So it's a wonderful facility. I mean, it's a bunch of, it's 13 individual buildings and then 9 single-family homes, and each of the buildings is set in the woods. And so, you know, that it's beautiful. We're just past peak out there, and it's gorgeous. But then again, it's in the woods. So we have to go through every tree every year and make sure that the dead ones or the ones that might fall on these things are taken out. There's a fair amount of capital expenditures that have to go into this thing. And now's the time for us really to, through this financing, beautify and also structurally start to address some of the issues on this campus to allow it to be the community resource it is. For example, the Mayor's Economic Council meets in our atrium, which is our assisted living facility. We have a strong tie-in with the arts community in Chagrin Falls, which is just fabulous. We load up our seniors and we take them into the Community Arts Festival, and we actually sponsor the Community Arts Festival. We're the second largest employer in the area after the school district. And so we are, Hamlet is, I mean, it's just like tied to the local community incredibly tightly. And it's my favorite facility in our portfolio. We have facilities all through the Midwest and the South. And it's just it's a community resource is what it is. And by the way, you won't ever find American Eagle's name anywhere on the community. We don't brand, we don't have we don't even have a website, because our perspective is that these institutions that we acquire are really local community resources, and they should be viewed by the local community, since we're not-for-profit, as being owned by the community. For example, we own the Wesleyan, which is in Elyria, Ohio, which was the old age home for widows 110 years ago. And once again, it's connected with the East Ohio Conference of Methodist Churches, and we are connected to the East Ohio Conference on Methodist Churches, and our Presbyterian facility in Indiana is a Presbyterian facility. I mean, we're non-denominational. We try and maintain the history and the historic relationship of our communities to their local communities. And we bring things that they might not have, such as a degree of financial sophistication that would allow them to be refinanced with lower cost financing than, say, a bank in today's environment. And so what we're trying to do here is really do things for the community. We haven't taken any money out of the facility since we acquired it. And that's who we are and what we're doing.
Other questions on that, Ms. Simon, to follow up?
So there's not going to be additional buildings built, it's more just going in and updating and maintaining?
We went, this year, we had several air conditioning units in these in the 13 buildings go bad. And what we discovered was when we went into the facilities, there were little crawl spaces of like 3.5 feet that you could get in and maybe change a component, but there was no way to get in and actually deal with if the whole thing failed or replace it. So we're ripping out the insides and putting in new condensers. And there was one woman who actually had one in her closet, and it was coming down on her clothes, and we had plastic all over. It cost us in her situation about $8,500 to configure it so that it was okay for her to maintain the space in her unit. But some of these things can be like $30,000, and they're kind of embedded in the walls. They were built very unwisely originally, and we need to put some capital into these units. It really needs them.
Yes, I think Ms. Baker was first. And
Yes, did I hear from Director Jackson that the 20% was for those with income of 24,750? Was that the percentage?
It's 50%
50.
of the area median income, and for our area.
Excuse me, Sarah, can you speak into the microphone, please?
Oh, I'm so sorry, my
about that.
fault.
It's 50% of area median income.
Okay.
And for our area, that 26,000, I didn't bring my notes, but that 26,000 represents a one-person household in this area at 50% of AMI.
I see. Okay, for now, let me think about that.
okay, Mr. Tuma?
Thank you. Through the chair, you spoke of the work that you do over there. Who's your typical tenant over there?
It can range from people who are, I mean, okay, so I was talking to a resident today. He's 94 years old. He was an engineer and an inventor. He lives in the community. He's running a diaper service right now at 94 years old. And he actually goes out and he's environmentally conscious, and he has his people pick up diapers, wash them, and deliver them back. I said to him, you know, not today, I've had conversations with him before, do you make any money doing this? He said, no, but it keeps him going, you know. And we have professors who have retired. We had somebody who ran an automotive parts. Ted Williams years ago was in the facility for a little while, I understand, before we ever owned it. But it's a wide swath of people who are really tied to the community. And in terms of economics, it's mainly people who have the affordability to move in. This is not, by its nature, a low-rent community. However, if people do exhaust their resources, then as a not-for-profit, we provide benefits. Now, it's not a high-end hoity-toity facility either. Our charges are to the middle to a little bit lower range. I mean, given the age of the facility, that's the nature of who we get. But the idea is to provide a dignified, interesting phase of life for the seniors in that area.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, yes.
For the nonprofits of senior living, as what you described, is it the industry's position that once all resources have been exhausted and they've been there maybe, I don't know how many years, that they would have to move to a different facility? Or do most nonprofits keep their residences and maintain their quality of life because they've given all that they have to the center that they're living in?
In Ohio, if you're going to take advantage of the tax exemption on your real estate taxes, but quite frankly, independent living is not exempt for real estate taxes in Ohio. But say in our assisted living facility, you have to maintain, you have to say that in your bylaws and your residency agreements. And it's our policy in all of our facilities all over the country because, you know, this is a charitable endeavor. I mean, you know, there are what they call lifestyle not-for-profits. There are people who have decided that a not-for-profit is the more opportune way to conduct this business. And I know many who do not provide that benefit unless the state laws require it.
All right, good to know. Thank you.
Any other questions? And I'm a little bit familiar with that because I know our grandchildren would take their artwork and because you have an art show usually also in that same atrium at times, and I think that's it's very comforting to see the common bonding between the seniors and the children coming from the schools out there. Any other questions or comments? Because I think what's the timing on this?
For different reasons, based upon the debt that we're paying off and whatnot, we really need to get this done by mid-December. And that's what we're targeting. And Standard & Poor's is very much, Standard & Poor's is going to rate these bonds, by the way, and they'll rate the issue. And so we're in that time frame for December 13th.
Okay, and where are you in your paperwork and documentation? I assume that you're doing all the documentation. So this is not going to be a county-written paperwork out there. So we'll just go through the regular readings then? Is that my understanding? If we vote this out, it'll go before a second reading at the next meeting. And before we get to the end of November, it'll be voted and be in the county executive's hands to sign off then. If your paperwork is ready to go, then.
So our paperwork is in very good order. We're hoping that the third reading would be suspended and at the second meeting that it could be approved because we like to get approval or need to get approval before we go to market with the bonds. So there's a marketing process that takes about a week and a half, 2 weeks to actually sell the bonds. And in order to feel comfortable sending that out, we like to have.
Well, I understand the interest rates are volatile at this point in time, so there's no reason to hold it up for third reading if we don't need to, if all questions have been answered. So the chair will move to have this approved for second reading suspension at the next meeting. It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Good luck.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Thank you. Take care of our seniors out there. Thank you. There's nothing else on the agenda. Is there any miscellaneous business? Hearing none. Call the meeting to